Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and tonight I'm going to be reviewing to you Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope for the Nintendo Switch. While this may sound like Yacht Club Games released yet another campaign for Shovel Knight, it's actually just renaming the first one that came out, because now that all the other campaigns had new names, well, they had to give a name to the first one. They couldn't just call it Shovel Knight, because that would be anticlimactic. So now the original Shovel Knight as the main character quest has been renamed Shovel of Hope. And it's still there if you're playing the Treasure Trove version, but as of 2020, you can now purchase Shovel Knight's original game on its own, without having to worry about all the extra stuff taking up space, which I imagine is the main reason they did it, because that was a lot of updates. I'm mostly going to be talking about the gameplay here, as opposed to the changes and updates made over the years, as I can't keep up with all of them. But I will quickly say that you can use Amiibo while you're playing this campaign to create your own custom Shovel Knight, as well as have a two-player mode and have some additional challenges. I wasn't able to test these features very thoroughly because the Joy-Cons I was using were not compatible with NFC technology. So I assume that it's basically just like what it does in Smash Brothers, and also offers you some additional hard levels if you don't have enough of the base game. So that's a lot. There's also an option to change the gender of every character in the game individually, so you can make all the guys girls and vice versa, and you can even play as a female Shovel Knight if you're a female gamer, which I think is super cool. It goes back to what I loved about playing the newer Fire Emblem games, where you chose your own protagonist, even though, because this is an 8-bit game, it really doesn't affect the gameplay that much, and the sprites don't actually look all that different. So, on to the gameplay. You play as Shovel Knight, who is a blue knight, duh, who carries a shovel, double duh. His abilities are jump, dig, and bounce on enemies and obstacles like a pogo stick. Yes, this is going to be compared to Scrooge McDuck and Cranky Kong from Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, and I do not care because this is so much fun, and I love how the levels are expertly designed so that you not only need to do the shovel bounce, but you'll want to, such as in this situation right here where I'm tearing apart a bunch of sand blocks, even though I don't have to. At first it took a while to get used to, because normally these kinds of moves are executed by pressing a button in most modern platformers, but pressing down on the control stick ended up feeling perfectly intuitive after a couple of rounds. Admittedly, I also played Shovel Knight Showdown before I made this footage, so that definitely helped with me getting a grasp on the controls, as Shovel Knight controls exactly the same as he did in that one, minus the special move. Now this is an 8-bit platformer that is attempting to recapture the glory days of the NES. From my memory, it reminds me a lot of the structure of Mega Man. However, there's also a world map like Super Mario Bros. 3, and there are towns with side quests and NPCs like Zelda 2, so there's quite a lot of influence here. The music is also fittingly retro, but yet it feels like a celebration of retro music. Of course, it's not fully orchestrated or anything like that, as much as the initial reveal trailer would have pretended to be, but it's still so celebratory and grand, and this is probably my favorite non-orchestral soundtrack on the market. Especially the music that you're hearing for this first level is just so triumphant, like Yacht Club Games is saying, "We succeeded in our goal! This game is out! Yes, we did it!" Honestly, I think they deserve a lot of praise. A lot of NES games really frustrate me, and that's why I haven't reviewed a whole lot on my channel. That's also why most of the games on my NES Classic Edition are still sitting there. However, where Shovel Knight really succeeds is that it tries a couple of modern conveniences to try to make it balanced between those who like to go to a strict, let's go totally back to the past, versus those who want a little bit of innovation. For starters, Shovel Knight controls really well. He's nice and responsive, and generally speaking, I didn't have trouble getting him where I wanted him to go. There's also a checkpoint system, which NES games severely lacked, even though I personally think it could have used some work. I felt the checkpoints were way too far apart from each other, and there were a lot of platforming sections that dragged on and on that I wish were a lot shorter. They also did a neat little risk-reward system to try to replace the traditional life system. Instead of losing a life, Shovel Knight loses some of the gold he's acquired. and the gold is used when you're in the towns to buy different services such as health upgrades. So, when you return to the place where you died, you'll get to see the bags of gold flying in the air. You can pick them up again, but if you die again, then you'll lose that gold permanently. You can choose to break out all the gold at once if you shatter the checkpoint pole, but if you die after that, then you will lose that gold that you just got. Now, I'm personally not the biggest fan of this system, but I also hate having lives in my platforming games, or in any games period, so I will take this over the alternative Super Mario Bros. Had to offer. Thank you very much. You know who I'm paraphrasing there. Overall, I think Shovel Knight is a lot more fair than most of the games of the genre it inspired, especially the Mega Man series. It's usually pretty clear where you have to go next on the world map, as you don't really need to know which bosses to defeat first, as the order doesn't really matter. There are a couple of times where there will be locks on the map that'll say beat King Knight's quest first, and I think that's a great way of telling the player, yeah, if you don't have the capability to figure it out, then don't. And I kind of wish Mega Man had that system. However, I also am a little bit frustrated that a few things in the original genre are still being preserved for the sake of preservation. Like, we still have instant death spikes and death traps where you get killed in one hit. Why is it that a life bar couldn't have been implemented? Or at the very least, even if Shovel Knight had to die in one hit from these instant death spikes, why not just have him respawn at the back of the room with less health? That way, at least players who aren't as good at jumping can be compensated, or if you could be given an option to not have instant death spikes. However, I found no such option. Maybe I'm really stupid and just missed it. I would love to hear it in the comment section. But I did not find anything, and I'm that guy that scours the options menu before I play a game. That's how I discovered the body swap, after all. And I personally think it's really cool. I may be the only Catholic that says that, but I think it's super cool to have a female Shovel Knight. Bet you never imagined that before Yacht Club Games came along. Overall, the level design is fairly linear, but there are quite a few secrets tucked here and there. You can collect music sheets that you can give them to the bard, and then he can play the soundtrack for you whenever you're in the village. This is such a neat fourth wall break, and I really wish more games would incorporate in-game soundtracks like that. Of course, if that wasn't enough for you, you actually do unlock the soundtrack after you beat the game. So you not only have an incentive to collect the music in the game to play, but you can also listen to it after you beat the game. So it's a win-win-win situation. Bigger companies learn from Yacht Club Games. This is an incredible solution. That being said, I kinda wish there was an option to play the original trailer music in its semi-orchestral glory, but I guess that also wouldn't make sense with this game's retro-themed art style. However, for being based on NES-style graphics, this is actually really beautiful. The game is significantly more colorful and has a wider color palette than the majority of NES games, if not all of them. And the music feels a lot more celebratory and grand. Most NES soundtracks are kind of low-key by comparison. I also really like the fact that the dialogue feels like it was properly formatted and doesn't feel like it has the usual tropes of cheesy 80s writing. Overall, the story isn't super deep, but at least there is one. And at least you have stuff like character motivations and plot twists, and that's something you didn't really see a whole lot in the NES genre. Overall, I found that Shovel Knight was a great revival of an era long gone. There were moments here and there that really frustrated me because I'm not a fan of that era of gaming. Personally, I really got my start with the N64, so if there's a game that tries to emulate that, well, I would probably say it's ugly, but it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have an N64 revival. That being said, I wouldn't say this is the perfect game for everyone, as if you hate instant death spikes and checkpoints that are way too spread apart, you're probably not going to like Shovel Knight. However, one thing that's undeniably amazing is that if you decide to get the Treasure Trove package, you are getting an incredible value. For approximately, I think it was $35, you get 5 different campaigns plus a fighting game mode. And even if you get Shovel of Hope on its own, Shovel Knight is such a fun character to play as. and the level design is, for the most part, pretty fair by a retro-style platformer like this. I think you're going to have a good time. It's definitely a challenging game at times. Even if you're good at NES games, I definitely think you'll find some hard moments. But Yacht Club Games has learned from the pitfalls of that era and has allowed a couple of modern conveniences to slip in. Couple that with an amazing soundtrack, and there's also other quests that you can do that I haven't even reviewed, and you're getting a good value. I personally don't think you should buy Shovel of Hope on its own unless you really are desperate not to have more content in a game, because who doesn't like a lot of content when they play a game? But if you've already played the others or watched a YouTuber that says they're all terrible, then I guess it wouldn't hurt. Now, Shovel of Hope did come out in 2020 as a standalone expansion, even if the game itself is actually a 2014 game. So therefore, I'm hesitant to give it a rating, but I would have to say that if I did, I'd probably say that it would be something like a 14 out of 15. The level design is not my favorite, and there have even been some games this year that have been way better, such as Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and I also really liked, Evergate. Those two games are much better than this, although I might also be biased because they also have fully orchestrated soundtracks. However, Shovel Knight is definitely one of the better examples of an indie company replicating the success of the 80s and finding relative success. Overall, I think that this is a great origin story for one of the assist trophies in Super Smash Bros., and I really hope that Yacht Club Games gets permission to maybe have Shovel Knight as a full-blown character. So with that, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. If there's anything I left out or if you have questions, please feel free to let me know in the comments section. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, God bless, and let's have Shovel Knight be playable in Smash Bros. It can happen. Bye.